I got kicked out as a teenager because my twin brother spread fake rumors about me. Years later, my parents saw I was doing well and suddenly wanted money from me after leaving me behind. I'm a 28-year-old woman and I have a twin brother. Growing up, my brother and I were treated like we came from two different families. For whatever reason, my parents acted like he was born to be somebody special and I was the problem child. The only real difference was that I liked sports and making friends more than sitting around studying. They compared us constantly. Right? I mean, it wore me down and like wrecked my confidence early on. If every birthday, my brother got these big over the top parties with all his friends. I felt like I barely mattered. He'd have sleepovers all the time, but I wasn't even allowed to bring friends to our house. Honestly, I hated most of my childhood. The one person who actually seemed to care about me was my grandma. When she came by, she'd bring my favorite chocolates. Sometimes she'd slip me a few dollars so I could buy myself something later. As I got older, the obvious favoritism toward my brother turned into straight up emotional abuse toward me. My parents would openly laugh at my grades and talk down about the things I liked. And no matter how hard I tried, I never measured up to whatever perfect kid they wanted. I was good at sports, but they wouldn't let me join activities because they wanted me focused on school, just like my brother. As a kid, I felt stuck and powerless. Then, during my sophomore year, I got grounded again. This time, my offense was having Snapchat on my phone. I hadn't done anything wrong. I was just like any other teenager, using an app to stay in touch with friends. But to my parents, it was some huge betrayal because they didn't want me talking to my friends at all. They completely lost it. They tore through my room and threw my stuff everywhere. Then they took my bedroom door off the hinges and told me I didn't deserve privacy as long as I lived under their roof. And my brother? Instead of backing me up, he made it worse. The way my parents treated me created this toxic setup where he could use everything against me. He started lying about me nonstop, accusing me of things I never did so he could get away with whatever he wanted. If something went missing, he'd blame me without hesitation. And my parents, already ready to believe the worst about me, bought every word. At school, he'd put me down in front of people, he'd make jokes about how I looked. Even with that, I had a lot of friends because I was easy to talk to and I liked meeting people. My brother wasn't like that. He had a hard time socially, and I could tell it bothered him that I could connect with people while he felt awkward and kept to himself. That jealousy hit a breaking point on our 14th birthday. For some reason, none of his friends showed up for him. I still don't know why they did that. Meanwhile, my friends took me out for ice cream, and I had a really good day. That made him even angrier. So, he decided to get back at me. He started spreading rumors at school, painting me like some spoiled brat. Then he took it further and told people I was physically abusing him at home because our parents loved him more. I didn't even know what was happening at first, and I had no idea how far he was willing to go. To make it look real, he started creating proof. He'd punch himself to leave marks, like a black eye or bruises on his shoulder. The next day, he'd walk into school with those injuries on display, acting like it was evidence that I'd hurt him. If our parents asked about it, he'd lie and say it came from something normal, like playing football with his friends. After a while, people started buying it, the black eye stories spread, and his version of things gained traction. Then the whispers started. Even some of my friends began looking at me differently. At first, it was small stuff. People who used to talk to me in the hallway suddenly kept their distance. I stopped getting invited to group hangouts. It felt like someone flipped a switch, and now everybody acted like I was this violent, spoiled girl they needed to avoid. One day I worked up the nerve to ask my former best friend what was going on. That's when she told me my brother had been telling everyone these detailed lies about me, accusing me of things I'd never done in my life. I was stunned. I felt sick, like the floor dropped out from under me. This was my twin, someone I grew up with, and he was telling people I was hurting him. It was a kind of betrayal that hit me right in the gut. After school that day, I confronted him. He acted like I didn't even exist. I begged him to stop, and he just smirked and told me I deserved to rot alone. At that point, his lying and his attitude were starting to scare me. I wanted to go to my parents, but I was terrified they'd take his side over mine. The isolation hurt even more because I'd always been the type to make friends easily, and now his jealousy driven lies were ripping apart the relationships I'd built. Teachers started hearing it too. It felt unreal, like I was living in some alternate world where the real me didn't matter, only the story my brother was selling. Or it wasn't just gossip anymore, it was shaping how people saw me. Eventually, the rumor reached the principal, and my worst nightmare happened. The principal called me and my brother into his office and had our parents come in too so we could talk about these accusations. I sat there with my heart hammering, hoping my brother would finally admit the truth. Instead, he leaned even harder into it. He told the principal, flat out, that the rumors were true. He described me like some bully who beat him up whenever our parents weren't around. I couldn't even process it. I just sat there in shock while he kept adding to this twisted story, saying I was angry because our parents gave him more love. It was all lies, but he held on to it like it was the truth. My mom started crying right there in the office. She grabbed onto him like he was some brave victim. My dad tried to comfort him, telling him it was courageous to speak up, and promising he'd make sure nothing ever happened to him again after that day. I tried to defend myself. I begged the principal to understand it was all made up. I felt like I couldn't breathe in that office. Everybody was staring at me like I was already guilty. I tried to explain myself, but my brother wouldn't let up. He kept insisting I was some angry, violent person who took it out on him every single day. My mom wouldn't stop crying, holding on to him while shooting me these accusing looks. It was like I was trying to argue with a whole room that had already made up its mind. The principal lit into me and said the school had zero tolerance for bullying. He told me this was enough to get me suspended. I begged him not to do it, but he just shook his head and said he couldn't ignore something like this. I kept pleading, crying hard, telling him I never laid a hand on my brother. The principal stayed firm and said I was suspended for 10 days so everyone would see what happens if you bully someone. That hit me like a truck. I cried even harder and practically begged him to change his mind. My parents were furious and embarrassed, and they yanked me out of the principal's office. I didn't want to leave. I wanted to keep explaining, to make somebody understand, but they weren't interested in hearing it. We walked out of the school, and I felt sick with humiliation. When we got home, everything got worse fast. Out of nowhere, my dad started packing up my things. I just stood there confused, like, what is happening right now? My mom asked him what he was doing, and he yelled that he wasn't going to let me live in the same house as my brother anymore. I was crying so hard I could barely talk. I got down on my knees and begged my brother to tell them the truth. He just stood there cold, like my tears didn't mean anything. My dad kept going, shoved my stuff into a suitcase, and then threw it into the foyer. I grabbed onto his leg, still begging him not to do this. It honestly felt like a nightmare. He told me a bully like me didn't deserve to stay in his house. Then he said he'd call his mother, my grandmother, and she could come get me if she wanted. In that moment, it felt like my whole world collapsed. I stood there in shock with my stuff scattered all over the foyer, kicked out of the only home I'd ever known. After a while, my grandmother showed up. She calmly gathered my things and loaded them into her car. She helped me into the passenger seat, made sure my seatbelt was on, and then walked back up to my parents' front door. She rang the doorbell. When my dad answered, she went off on him for doing this to me. She told him straight up that if he ever came near me or tried to contact me again, she would call the police or CPS. She said what he did to a kid could land him in jail. My mom tried to push the blame onto me, saying it was my fault. My grandmother didn't accept that for a second. She stood right there and defended me, saying I was just a child and I didn't deserve to be treated like this. That was the first time I really understood how strong she was. She didn't back down, and unlike my parents, she trusted me. Then we drove away, leaving my old life behind. I can't even describe how much that hurt. At my grandmother's place, I remember crying on the bed and refusing to eat, even though she kept trying to get me to. I told her what my brother had been doing, and she was shocked too. She told me she believed me, and I was relieved I had at least one person in my corner. When those 10 days were finally over, going back to school felt like walking into a trap. The hallways were the same, but everything felt different. People stared, whispered, and gave me those side looks like they already knew who I was. The accusations were still hanging in the air. My brother acted like I didn't exist. He'd found a few people who believed him, and they treated him like this helpless victim. I tried to tell my side to anyone who would listen, but nobody cared. I became the outcast. That label stuck to me everywhere. Class, cafeteria, the halls. The looks people gave me were full of distrust. So, I turned into a loner. I kept my head down, went to class, ate lunch alone, and went straight back home. I had no friends, and it felt like nobody wanted me there. And through all of it, my parents never called once to check on me. My grandmother kept telling me this wasn't my fault and that life would be okay eventually. I finished high school with good grades, and I was counting down the days until college because I hoped I could start over. College was the first time I ever felt real freedom. Nobody was watching my every move. Nobody was comparing me to my brother. Nobody was trying to compete with me. I met people who felt like my kind of crowd, and I started building friendships again. I still had emotional and physical scars from everything I'd been through, but I tried my best to put it behind me and actually live my life. That's also when I realized I was good at content writing. I'd always wanted to be a writer, but I didn't think it was something I could really rely on long term, so I'd push the dream aside. Still, I needed extra money, so I started freelancing and writing on the side. I signed up on different freelancing sites, and that's how I started landing work with prominent clients. Little by little, I built up a portfolio. I kept that side hustle going through college, and I never asked my parents for a single cent. After I graduated, I didn't take the corporate route. I realized I could do content writing full time, and it was already working. I had multiple clients and long-term professional relationships, and they kept bringing me onto more projects. Having a real freelancing career made me financially independent, and it also let me travel as a digital nomad. Traveling helped me heal from my past. It wasn't easy, but I saved as much as I could and took a chance on myself. Over the years, I've seen a lot of the world, and there's still so much more I want to see. The only person I truly considered family the whole time was my grandmother, and I adored her. She was sad when I moved out, but she understood I needed to stand on my own. Even when I was busy, I made sure I showed up for her whenever I could. I'd visit on weekends, share meals, sit on the porch with her, and talk for hours. Sometimes about childhood, sometimes about what was going on in my life now. A lot of weekends I'd spend whole afternoons helping her with chores or going with her to the local park for an easy walk. Recently, I finished one of the most important projects of my career. I can't say the brand name, but it was a huge opportunity. I got to write blogs and product descriptions for them, and I knew it was a big deal. When the project ended, I asked the team I worked with to leave me positive reviews on my websites. They were happy to do it. I took screenshots of some of the reviews and posted them on my Instagram because I knew working with that brand mattered. Like I expected, a lot of other content writers messaged me to congratulate me, and some of them even reposted my story to help get the word out. After that, I started getting messages from strangers who wanted help with their websites too. Some of my relatives noticed what was happening online, and a few reached out to congratulate me. Then I got a message from my college's principal. He'd seen that I was doing well and invited me back to speak at a seminar about building a career as a content writer. Public speaking isn't my strength, so I was nervous, but I decided to take the chance and said yes. Standing in front of those students and sharing what I'd learned, I honestly felt like my life had come full circle. I talked about the struggles I went through and how I kept working to support myself even when things were rough. It felt good to help other people, and give something back to the writing community. Some clips from that talk started spreading in Facebook groups because people related to what I said. For the first time, it felt like I was being recognized for how hard I'd worked. Then last week, I got invited onto a local news channel. The show was about the benefits of content writing, and they wanted me to talk about my journey and what I'd learned. I was nervous, but I was also excited. On the show, I talked about my experience, how important client reviews can be, and how even one appreciation post can open doors you never expect. Reaching a bigger audience and encouraging more people in the field felt both humbling and thrilling. When it aired, I posted some clips on my Instagram because I was proud I'd been invited onto TV. That's when more relatives and cousins started realizing how well I was doing. My parents had never talked about me to anyone, so most people had no clue I was working with popular brands and showing up on TV. Word spread fast through the family, and I'm pretty sure that TV interview finally got back to my parents too, because a few days later, I was working on another project with my phone on silent. When I finished and checked it, I saw 6 missed calls from my mom. Seeing my mom's name on my phone honestly stunned me. She hadn't called me in a very, very long time, so after all those years of silence, I couldn't even guess why she was reaching out. I called her back, kind of nervous, and she answered right away. I asked if everything was okay. Instead of sounding worried, she started congratulating me. Then my dad came onto the call too. I'm pretty sure he was sitting right next to her. He started asking about my life, how I was doing, all that I answered without thinking much of it. It didn't feel strange until they started poking around about money. They asked how much I was making now. I shut that down and told them it wasn't their business. My dad immediately hit me with, "We're family, so don't be shy. Tell us." I just said I was doing well financially. The second I said that, my mom switched gears and started talking about how hard their lives were lately. That's when I got suspicious because it was suddenly obvious where this was going. This is basically how the conversation went. My mom said they were retired now and had been wanting to renovate the house for a while. She said it was in bad shape and they didn't have any savings left. I said, okay. Then she told me my success gave them hope. She said after seeing my TV interview, they figured maybe I could pay for the renovations. My dad jumped in and said, "We're family. You shouldn't hesitate to share some of your earnings with us. We really need your help." I couldn't believe what I was hearing. I said, "Are you serious right now? You haven't talked to me in years and now you're calling to ask for money? I don't know what suddenly made you reach out, and sure, thanks for the congratulations, but I'm not helping you." That's when my mom started calling me a bitch and saying I had to support them because we're family. My dad backed her up and said that since they're my parents, I owe it to them to take care of them, and this was the least I could do. I was so angry I wanted to rip into them, but instead of just arguing, I got another idea. I didn't want them thinking they could mistreat me for years and then come back to use me like an ATM. So I told them I'd help them, but only if they agreed to my conditions. My dad asked what I meant. I told them straight. If they wanted my money, they had to admit publicly, right in front of family and friends, that my brother was the one behind those rumors that ruined my reputation. I wanted the truth said out loud. I wanted my brother embarrassed, the way I'd been embarrassed when everyone believed his lies. And I wanted my parents to own what they did and acknowledge the damage they caused. My dad immediately started questioning why a public admission was necessary. My mom tried to push for a private conversation instead, like we could just talk quietly and move on. I refused. That condition wasn't negotiable. If they wanted help from me now or ever, the truth had to be said publicly, and my brother had to face consequences. Things got heated fast. My dad raised his voice and pulled the "I'm your father" card, saying it was my duty to help family when they needed it. My mom tried one last guilt trip, telling me to do the right thing and reminding me of all the years they raised me. All I could think was how ridiculous that sounded. I reminded them they kicked me out, and my grandmother was the one who actually took care of me, not them. They got more and more worked up, but I stayed firm. I told them if they wanted to be in my life and wanted financial help, then the truth had to be acknowledged publicly, and my brother had to answer for what he did. Ever since that call, they've been calling me nonstop, and I've been ignoring it. Honestly, I'm starting to regret calling them back at all. So now I'm wondering, would I really be wrong if I didn't help my parents in any way? Update 1. It's been a crazy week since I shared my story, and the support I've gotten has been overwhelming. It helps knowing I'm not alone. I'm also glad so many people agree I shouldn't engage with my parents or even consider helping them after what they put me through. The truth is, I gave them that condition because I knew they'd never do it. They love my brother too much. Even if they know now that it was all his lies, I don't believe they'll ever put him through what they put me through. Today, my brother sent me a nasty text after my parents tried to contact me again, and I refused to answer. This is what he wrote. He said, "Hey sis, it's been a long time since I've seen you, and I can tell you every day without you has been great. I heard mom and dad reached out and you gave them some crazy ultimatum. They're never going to do it, and you know that. They never loved you, and they'll never do anything to hurt me. I admit I lied about you 15 years ago, but it was a long time ago. Stop being selfish and move on. You're unmarried and childless anyway, so why won't you help them by paying for repairs and renovations? Do the right thing and be a better daughter." Reading that felt like getting stabbed in the chest. The way he brushed off everything I went through, like it was nothing, said everything about him. And bringing up that I'm unmarried and don't have kids, like that was supposed to shame me into paying, made it even worse. The whole thing felt like one long attempt to guilt me into putting their needs above my own, and it was beyond offensive. At that point, I was done staying quiet. I wanted the truth out in the open. So I sat down and wrote an email to my parents and close relatives. I laid out the painful details of my childhood and how I was treated in that house. I described how strict and controlling things were, how my parents treated me compared to my twin, and how my brother spread that awful, completely false rumor at school. I wrote about the consequences, how it wrecked my reputation, and how my parents threw me out. I said it plainly. If my grandmother hadn't stepped in, I might have ended up dead on the streets. Near the end of the email, I told everyone to read a message my brother sent me. I attached a screenshot where he admitted he lied about me. It was a confession, and I wanted people to finally see what had been hidden for way too long. I sent the email an hour ago. I already know everything is going to explode once my parents and my brother read it. I'll update next with how my family reacts. Update 2. It's been a month since my last update, and a lot has happened. Like you'd expect, my family blew up after the email. My parents got hit with criticism from relatives who had no idea how bad the favoritism and emotional abuse really were. A lot of family members reached out to me saying they had no clue, and they apologized for not being there for me. My brother and my parents started sending me a flood of texts. They got more and more abusive, and some were violent enough that I finally contacted a lawyer. The lawyer sent them a cease and desist notice. It warned them not to contact me again, and said if they kept going, there would be serious legal consequences. I guess that scared them because they stopped contacting me after that. My grandmother says I did the right thing by telling the truth, and she supports me 100%. She's the only person who truly matters to me, so I'm grateful she has my back. Update 3. It's been 2 months since the last update, and right now, my life is going well. Work-wise, my content writing business has been thriving. I keep getting invited to seminars and podcasts, and it's helped build my reputation in my field. I'm still as close to my grandmother as ever. Recently, I took a 1-week break from work just to spend time with her. She's really into gardening lately, and she's been teaching me a lot about the flowers and herbs in her yard. Those moments with her, sharing meals, talking for hours, or just sitting together, are the ones I value most. My family hasn't contacted me since the lawyer's letter, and I'm honestly relieved they've stayed away. On a personal level, I've started therapy, and I'm hoping it helps me finally heal. I think this will be my last update for now.